Hey Brandeis Bears, it's Miss Jones here. Wanted to take a moment to talk to you guys about something. We talk a lot here at Brandeis about growing your brain. We have a school-wide pledge that we say every morning that really talks about perseverance, defining who we are, and how we attack challenges head on. And as I walk down the halls, I see posters hanging up that talk about how we make mistakes sometimes, but we have to keep working, and how we have to do our best so we can grow our brains. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what I think it means to grow your brain, because that's kind of a tough idea, because, you know, technically your brain doesn't get bigger. After you're about 5 years old, your brain's actually done most of its growing. So I want to talk a little bit about what we mean when we say grow your brain, and really how you do it. I'm going to pull up this guy here. Some of you may know him, maybe you do not. He's Dwayne Johnson, commonly known as The Rock. He was a wrestler. More recent, he was actually also a football player, and more recently he was in the movie Jumanji, the new version that maybe you've seen, and he is also the voice of and who this character from Moana was based on. So this is The Rock, and as you can see, he is a bit of a large man. He clearly works out. I've done some research on him. He has a pretty intense exercise routine that he does because it's very important to him and his life and his career that he be a very, very fit man. So we're going to talk a little bit about The Rock, and hopefully you can see the connection that I'm going to make to The Rock growing his arm muscles to how we grow our brain, which is also a muscle. So here's a picture I found of The Rock doing his arm workout. So this is working a lot of muscles, but in particular, he's working on building up his biceps. So I want you to clearly make note of the size of these weights, but I also want you to make note of his face. If you could turn to your shoulder partner for just a moment, and in a quiet like a whisper, if you could use a word to describe his face, what he's thinking, maybe what he's feeling. Take a moment to do that with your shoulder or face partner, please. So I know I'm not in there to hear the words that you're saying, but I've done this with other classes, and I heard words like determined, frustrated, it's really hard. Some people said he looked a little bit angry. So the point being, when he's doing something that's clearly strenuous and difficult and hard, sometimes that makes us feel frustrated. Sometimes it feels very, very hard. But what I know about The Rock and what I know about you is that he does not give up. He doesn't put those weights down. He knows if he wants to get the results of growing those muscles, he's got to work that hard. When we look at this next slide, do you think he would have the same results if he was doing that very same exercise with these tiny little 3-pound weights? Of course not. Of course he would not possibly get the same results as he does with the weights that he's using. If he was doing that very same exercise with those tiny purple weights, I'll be certain his face would not look like it does in the picture. It would be, one student in Miss Ray's class said, it'd be like he was lifting a feather. It would cause no stress for him. He would not be working out his muscles at all, and he would not grow his biceps like it's clearly a goal for him. So he can't possibly be doing something that is so easy for him. It is important to make note that he may have started with, long time ago, he may have started with weights that looked like the purple ones. You can't just jump to those big, huge weights. There is a process, but you can't stick with something that's so easy for you if you want growth. I'm sure you know what this is, and if you don't, I'll let you know that this is a tape measure. If your teacher has one, maybe she can get it out for you. This is a tape measure, and this would be a tool that The Rock could use to measure those bicep muscles. I've done some research and I actually read that his biceps measure 20 inches. So he could take that tape measure and put it around his bicep and he could measure 20 inches. If he worked out really, really hard and he measured again a few weeks later, it might be 21 inches because his arm muscle will physically grow and it can be measured with a tool like a tape measure. You could wrap this right around his arm and get that measurement. Now, our brain works a little bit differently. Our brain is also a muscle, similar to the arm muscle that the rock has, but it does not grow in the same way. What you see here is a picture of a brain of someone who is learning how to juggle. This person did not know how to juggle, and this was a picture of their brain while they were learning a brand new, pretty tricky skill. So when you see these spots, I don't want you guys to get a misunderstanding. Your brain does not light up. But when you do something challenging and learn something new, your brain makes connections that weren't there before. So while the rock's arm muscle physically gets bigger, when we talk about our brain growing, it's because we are making connections of the cells in our brain called neurons make connections. And that is how we gain new knowledge. I will tell you that if this was the brain of someone who already knew how to juggle, they would not be making these connections. We only make new connections when we do things that are new and are challenging. So when we talk about growing your brain, that can't happen if you are like the rock, picking up those small little purple weights. You have to do things that are challenging, not so far out of reach that you're so frustrated you can't think twice, but that are a little bit out of your reach that are going to cause you to challenge and to cause you to make these new connections. So how do we measure your brain growth? I can't put a tape measure around your head. How do we measure to see if you're making these connections, to see if you've made any new connections? A tape measure around your head won't do it. I can't climb in your ear right here and see. So we have to use a tool like the rock uses the tape measure to measure his arm. We use MAP as a tool to measure if you are making new connections. So boys and girls, you sit down at the computer. I'm often, or Miss Yates are in the room with you and your teacher, and you sit down 3 times a year. That's all. Once at the beginning of the year, once before we went on winter break, and we'll do it one more time before the end of the year. When we sit down to that MAP test, it's just like the rock putting a tape measure around his arm. It is our way to measure what new connections, what new learning that you've made. It's so critically important that when you sit down to take your MAP test, that you take it seriously. You have to give every question the attention that it deserves. You will see some questions on that MAP test that you're like, whoa, this is out of bounds. I haven't learned this before. And it's okay. But you have to try very hard to make connections and do the best on every question that you can. It's the only way we can measure new learning that you have. Gonna hop through, let's see here. Here we go. Yes, for you to grow and for you to achieve, for the rock to grow and for the rock to achieve, you have to work hard. You remember what his face looked like in that picture. He was working hard. And you have to work on the right things. So when we look back to the rock, if he wanted to work on his bicep muscles, he's going to have to work hard. I'm going to hop over this slide real quick. He'd have to work hard, and this wouldn't be it. He could not do these weights. That's not hard work for him. Not where he's at now. And while he's, look at his face in this one. While he's straining, he's not going to grow his biceps because he's working his legs. So this is a great leg workout, but if his goal is to get his biceps big and strong, he's got to work hard, and he has to work on the right things. So while he's working hard in this particular situation, he's working on his legs. So he's got to work hard, and he's got to work hard on the right things. I'm going to go back to you and your schoolwork and your learning. For you to grow and achieve, you have to work hard. You can't be lazy. You can't just come to school and sit in a chair. You've got to work hard, and you have to understand that with hard work comes moments where you're like, this is just so hard. Well, you have to persevere. You have to fight through it, and you have to work on the right things. Sometimes you want to do the things that are easy because they're comfortable to you. But if you do that, you will not grow and you will not achieve. Here's an example. You have got to pick books that are just right for you. You can't, even if it's your favorite book and you've been reading it since you were a little boy or girl, that's fine to read at night when you're going to bed. But when you're at school and you're doing your reading log for homework, you can't pick those easy books, because picking those easy books, remember that brain that was making connections when they were juggling? If you're picking too easy books, you're not making new connections. So you've got to make sure that you're not picking books that are too easy. But boys and girls, it's also important not to pick books that are too hard. If you're picking books that are too far out of bounds for you, that's not the right place either for growth. You have to pick books, and your teacher and Miss Panucci will help you. You have to pick books that are just right for you. There are some words that you don't know, but for the most part you understand it, so you can really dig in to the content of the book. So this is very important. It's like The Rock using those little bitty weights. No, we don't want to do that. We want to find things that are just right. So here's a math example. If you know your basic facts, you don't need to be working on those anymore. You might like to because you know them so quickly, but you can do that at home, maybe for fun, sitting in the car on the way home, work on your math facts on an iPad game. But guys, if it's time to do things that are bigger, time to do things that are more challenging, even if it might be confusing to you, you have to be willing to dip into that challenge so you can grow and you can achieve. There it is again. And I'm gonna end things, guys. Our entire Brandeis Pledge, I don't know if you know it by heart or not. If you do or if you don't, it's hanging in your classroom on a blue poster with a polar bear on it. We say it every day, and I want you to understand what it means. When we say that we'll attack challenges head on, you have to attack challenges. You have to do things that are challenging, or your brain doesn't make those new connections. So even if something's hard, you've got to meet it head on. Fight for understanding. Don't drop your head. Don't cry if it's too hard. Don't stomp away and give up. You have to fight for your understanding. And you have to stay confident and believe in yourself even when you make a mistake. Because it's in mistakes that we learn. It's in mistakes that our brain's growing the most. So boys and girls, when we say this pledge, please, I want you to mean these words. And that big P word, perseverance. You saw The Rock's face when he was working out. That's what perseverance sometimes looks like. Boys and girls, I want you to be your best. And to be your best, you have to strive for the best and look for things that can challenge you to make some new connections today. You all are awesome. I love and care about you. Have a great day.